the face, the only face, the real face of women's basketball, period. She did it again, Caitlyn Clark, shattering records, creating new viewership records for USA Sports. She did it again. Y'all keep running around trying to pretend like this person's the face of the league, that person's the face of the league because they've been here for.
When was the last time a single athlete made an entire sports league freeze in absolute terror? Not a trade demand, not a contract holdout, not a locker room revolt. One player, one statement, one ultimatum that sent shockwaves through every boardroom, every sponsor office, and every network headquarters simultaneously. Right now, as you're watching this, the people running the WNBA are not sleeping. Executives are scrambling. Brand partners are pulling up contracts they haven't looked at in months. Network producers who already sold millions in primetime advertising are sitting in emergency meetings trying to figure out how a single administrative decision just lit their entire investment on fire. And it all traces back to Caitlyn Clark. Fresh off yet another historic performance, another Player of the Week honor, another moment that left broadcast analysts completely speechless, Clark didn't celebrate. She delivered words that will echo through sports history. Bring Sophie Cunningham back, remove the ban, fix this, now. Here at Clark's Spotlight, we don't soften what's happening. We tell you exactly what's going on and exactly who's responsible. Drop a comment right now. Did Clark just make the greatest power move in modern sports history, or did the league destroy itself?
Just proud of our group, and obviously a lot of people stepped up in AB's absence, and obviously KK, was incredible tonight too.
You said you could tell before the game started. Was there a moment or point in time where that happened? Did a specific thing happen? How did that feeling come for you?
I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like you just have to believe you're going to have those type of nights, and you have to visualize having those type of nights, and I feel like that's what I did. And it's not always going to go your way. Sometimes there's going to be a stretch where the ball's not going through the rim, and you can't get discouraged. And I know all the time and the work that I've put in, and people believe in me, and more than anything I believe in myself. And you just got to dig your feet in a little bit, and when it's not going your way, nobody cares. Find a way to make it better, and find a way to help your team win and make this team better. And I feel like that's what I always try to do.
One or two tied up. You're kind of scrambling a little bit as the shot clock's kind of falling down. They got a deflection, circled back towards half court and kind of went up. Can you take us through that? I think that was your 41st point to kind of go ahead that whole play.
Yeah, obviously we had the ball with the game tied, and they kind of blew up our ATO. They played good defense and, got a good tip on the ball, and I was able to chase it down and then get the deflection, which I don't know if I got her on the arm or if it was clean, but I'm not sure the ref was in a position to make the call. I think it was pretty clean. I don't know, but just tried to make a good play on the ball, and then obviously coming back down, I was trying to get the ref to inbound it faster. I wanted to play.
To understand why this situation exploded into a full-scale crisis that nobody inside the league was prepared to handle, you have to understand who Sophie Cunningham actually is, because the way league administrators treated her tells you everything you need to know about what's fundamentally broken inside this organization right now. Sophie Cunningham is not a role player quietly filling a roster spot and collecting a paycheck. She's one of the most genuinely authentic, magnetic personalities in modern women's basketball. She plays with a competitive fire and a raw, unfiltered energy that fans respond to immediately and instinctively, not because it's manufactured, not because some PR team crafted her image carefully, but because it's completely real. She talks the way she plays. She competes the way she lives. And millions of people across the country recognize that authenticity and connected to it deeply and personally. So when the WNBA Players Association quietly moved to restrict licensees from using Sophie Cunningham's name and likeness, in connection with what they officially classified as a derogatory moment, the public reaction wasn't just negative. It was volcanic. Immediate, loud, coordinated, and absolutely furious in a way that caught league administrators completely off guard, which itself tells you how badly disconnected they are from the audience they're supposedly serving. Here's the context that makes this ban so deeply infuriating to anyone paying real attention. The moment in question wasn't a cheap shot. It wasn't a dirty play that embarrassed the league. It wasn't something that required damage control or sensitive handling. It was Sophie being exactly Sophie. Raw energy, genuine competitive fire. completely unfiltered and entirely authentic. And it became the single most viral clip the league produced all season, not the most controversial clip. The most viral, the most shared, the most talked about. The moment that pulled casual viewers into the conversation and made them actually care about women's basketball. Think about what that means from a pure business perspective for just 1 second. You are a league trying to grow your audience. You are a league spending millions on marketing campaigns, trying to reach new viewers who don't already have a reason to tune in. And organically, without any campaign spend, without any promotional push, without any coordinated effort from your marketing department, a player produces a moment so genuine and so electric that it spreads across every major platform entirely on its own. And your response is to bury it. Sports business veteran Darren Rovell, someone with more than 5 decades of experience watching how leagues and unions navigate these exact situations, confirmed publicly that leagues do maintain long-standing rules against what they classify as derogatory nil usage. He pointed to the NBA's own history, specifically the Reggie Miller incident, where a gesture that generated controversy was ultimately restricted from licensing use entirely. That precedent is real. The rule itself is not invented. But here is the critical difference that separates every historical example from what happened to Sophie Cunningham. The Reggie Miller moment was not the most popular viral clip of an entire league season. Cunningham's was. Banning the Reggie Miller gesture cost the NBA a controversial moment. Banning Sophie Cunningham's moment cost the WNBA its single greatest organic marketing opportunity of the entire year. Those are not the same situation, not even remotely close. And the fact that league administrators treated them as equivalent reveals a decision-making process that is completely detached from the reality of how modern audiences consume and share sports content. The public outrage landed immediately, and it landed hard. Social media platforms lit up. Forums erupted. Sports talk shows that had never spent a single segment discussing WNBA administrative policy were suddenly dedicating entire programs to the ban. And the league offered almost nothing in response. But the single biggest miscalculation they made wasn't banning Cunningham. It was assuming Caitlyn Clark would stay quiet and let it happen.
More than 50 years of sports business, Darren Rovell is telling the truth. Leagues and unions have been long forbidden using derogatory NIL. The most popular NBA student example of this is the Reggie Miller choke and crotch grab. There she is, Helen of Troy. There she is, Helen of Troy, Sophie Cunningham herself. They generally do not know how to run a marketing campaign. Folks, when I first saw this, I was like, dude, who is this troll? Who is this troll? But then I looked at the source and I was like, oh, this is a real source. This isn't some Joe Schmo. This is...
Clark didn't schedule a press conference. She didn't hand the message to a public relations team to soften into something palatable for corporate consumption. She didn't carefully word a social media post designed to express frustration while maintaining plausible deniability with league officials. She stepped directly into the light, looked straight at the people making these decisions, and made her position completely and permanently unmistakable. Bring Sophie back, remove the ban, fix this, now. Every single word carried the full weight of her platform behind it. And her platform at this specific point in the season is not a small or abstract thing. This is a player who is single-handedly responsible for the most watched games in the entire history of the league's broadcast partnerships. This is someone whose name on a marquee generates more guaranteed viewership than any promotional campaign the league has ever designed, funded, or executed internally. When Caitlyn Clark speaks publicly about league business, the financial numbers standing behind her voice are staggering in a way that makes it genuinely impossible for administrators to simply dismiss the statement and move on. What made the ultimatum so stunning to people inside the league wasn't just the content of what she said, it was the framing. Clark didn't position this as a personal grievance between herself and league management. She didn't frame it as a contract dispute or a negotiation tactic. She framed it as a defense of authenticity itself. A public stand against an administrative culture that had decided its job was to silence the players who bring the most genuine, unscripted energy to the game. She called out the gatekeepers directly and publicly for sabotaging their own platform. And that level of accountability, delivered openly by an athlete who is still actively playing, is something that sports analysts covering this league said they had genuinely never witnessed before. The reason athletes historically stay quiet when leagues make decisions they know are wrong comes down to something very simple and very real. Fear. Fear of fines. Fear of reduced playing time. Fear of being quietly removed from opportunities they worked their entire careers to reach. Fear of the kind of reputational damage that league-connected media can deliver to a player who steps too far out of line. The corporate structure of professional sports spent decades making athletes understand, without ever saying it directly, that speaking up costs more than staying silent. That understanding kept locker rooms quiet through decisions that were obviously wrong, obviously political, and obviously driven by something other than the best interests of the players or the fans. Clark just destroyed that entire system in a single statement, publicly, in front of millions of witnesses, in real time. She told the league's entire administrative structure something that no athlete at her level has ever communicated this clearly while still actively competing. The old power dynamic is over. The idea that executives hold all the leverage and athletes must accept whatever comes down from above, regardless of how unjust, regardless of how transparently political, regardless of how damaging to the sport itself, that idea is finished. Because when your single most valuable asset decides she is willing to go to war over a principle, you have no leverage remaining. None whatsoever. The threat only works if the athlete has something to lose. And Clark made it absolutely clear she's decided that her integrity is worth more than her comfort. Sports analysts watching this unfold described it as a genuinely new moment in women's sports. Not performative solidarity engineered for social media approval. A calculated, clear-eyed statement from someone who understands precisely how much power she holds and chose to use it in defense of someone the league tried to make disappear. The league is only now beginning to understand how completely they underestimated her.
Lady right here, Sophie Cunningham. So that takes us back to Darren Rovell. The WNBA Players Association is currently prohibiting licensees from using the Sophie Cunningham point, saying that it is, quote, derogatory. What? What? That is absurd. And if I was Sophie Cunningham, I would be kicking and screaming. What? I saw this and was like, oh, this league is ate up with the perpetually offended. The most viral moment of the year can't get licenses because you got players that were offended by it. Remember all the people online? Oh, that's so disrespectful to black women.
Here is where the panic at the executive level stops being theoretical and becomes something that can be measured in cold, hard financial language that leaves absolutely no room for spin or interpretation. When Caitlyn Clark takes the floor, broadcast numbers do something that no marketing strategy, no league expansion initiative, and no multi-million-dollar promotional campaign has ever been able to consistently replicate. They rise, reliably, dramatically, night after night, market after market, matchup after matchup. The 3 highest-rated games on USA Network during this entire season share exactly one common factor: the Indiana Fever, more specifically, Caitlyn Clark. Fever versus Sparks. Fever versus Tempo. Fever versus Sparks again. 3 of the top 3 slots on the network's performance chart, all featuring the same player, all drawing well over 1.4 million dedicated viewers tuning in specifically to watch number 22 operate. Now look at what happens when Clark isn't in the picture. The numbers don't soften. They don't adjust downward to a slightly lower but still respectable level. They collapse. Broadcast metrics that network producers had begun building entire multi-season advertising strategies around simply vanish when the primary driver of those metrics isn't on the floor. Sponsors who signed contracts based on projected viewership growth find themselves staring at audience figures that bear no resemblance to the numbers they were shown when the deals were being negotiated. Factor Clark's ultimatum into that financial picture, and you begin to understand why corporate attorneys across multiple organizations are currently working hours they were never scheduled to work. Network producers who already pre-sold primetime advertising inventory are sitting in rooms trying to explain to global brand partners why their most valuable broadcast asset is publicly in conflict with the league that controls her schedule. those conversations are not comfortable. Brand partners don't negotiate based on tradition, loyalty, or how long a relationship has existed. They negotiate based on audience reach and return on investment. And the audience reach they purchased was built almost entirely on one player's gravitational pull. The Fever Sparks matchup drawing, numbers that entire league-wide game slates couldn't touch, tells the complete financial story in terms that require no translation. One player, one team, a specific set of matchups, generating broadcast revenue that props up the economic health of the entire enterprise. That is not a sustainable or healthy league ecosystem. That is total structural dependency on a single individual. And the administrative leadership of this league created that dependency by spending years refusing to develop genuine stars organically, while simultaneously doing everything in their power to undercut the one star who broke through on her own terms anyway. Behind closed doors right now, the financial calculations are being run. What does a single Clark absence cost per broadcast? What does a distracted, conflict-consumed season cost in sponsor retention? What does it cost in long-term brand trust when global corporate partners feel like they invested heavily in a product that imploded over internal politics that could have been resolved in a single afternoon meeting? Every single number coming back from those calculations points in exactly the same direction. The league cannot afford to lose this fight, not by any measurement, not even slightly. For decades, the unspoken rule inside every professional sports locker room was enforced without anyone ever needing to write it down or say it directly. You keep your head down. You play the game you were paid to play. You let the people upstairs handle the business decisions, even when those decisions are visibly wrong, even when they hurt people you genuinely respect, even when they are transparently driven by internal politics rather than anything resembling fairness or merit. You stay in your lane. You protect your career, you survive. That culture of silence didn't develop because athletes are passive or weak. It developed because the power imbalance was real, and the consequences for stepping outside the accepted boundaries were painful in very specific and targeted ways. Fines, reduced playing time, opportunities that quietly disappeared without explanation, reputational damage delivered through league-connected media channels in ways that were deniable but unmistakable to anyone inside the system. These tools were used effectively for generations to keep athletes quiet about decisions they knew were wrong. The system worked because athletes understood that speaking cost more than silence, and most weren't in a position to absorb that cost. Caitlyn Clark just dismantled the entire structure of that system in a single public statement. And right now, in every facility, every practice court, and every locker room across this league, players are watching what's unfolding with a very specific combination of emotions. Awe at the scale of what she did, and something that looks, to anyone paying attention, very much like relief. Because here is what Clark's stand actually communicated to every other player in this league. Not just the stars at the top of the pay scale, not just the players with endorsement deals and social media followings. Every single athlete grinding on the edges of roster spots, fighting for recognition in a system that has rarely rewarded them based purely on merit. It communicated that the moment a player with genuine drawing power decides to use that power in defense of someone being treated unjustly, the entire administrative machine is exposed as far more fragile than anyone inside it wanted anyone outside it to realize. Commentators who have covered this league closely noted that the relationship between Clark and her teammates has always been built on something more substantive than basketball chemistry alone. There is a mutual respect that operates differently from what typically develops in professional environments where competition for minutes, attention, and resources is constant and fierce. Clark has never positioned herself as separate from or elevated above the people around her. She competes as part of something, not above it. Her public defense of Cunningham is completely consistent with every observable element of that character. This is not someone performing solidarity for approval. This is someone who looked at something unjust and decided staying quiet wasn't something her integrity would allow. The locker room culture in women's basketball will not return to what it was before this week. That door is permanently closed. Within hours of Clark's ultimatum entering the public conversation, the response across every major digital platform wasn't just significant. It was overwhelming in a way that caught even the most experienced sports media observers off guard. Fan communities that had been simmering with frustration over the Cunningham ban for days transformed almost immediately into organized, focused, and directed forces, demanding specific accountability from specific people inside the league's administrative structure. Comment sections under official WNBA social media posts were flooded with messages that made the public sentiment completely impossible to misread. Hashtags demanding Sophie's reinstatement began trending across multiple platforms at the same time. Viewership blackout campaigns, where fans pledged to turn off games entirely until the ban was reversed, started gaining real traction with a speed that nobody in the league's digital team was prepared to manage. This wasn't the typical scattered, unfocused online frustration that sports organizations have learned to simply wait out over a news cycle or two. This response had direction. It had a specific demand attached to it. It had leadership in the form of the most recognizable name in the sport. And it was growing every hour rather than slowly fading the way organizations hope online pressure always eventually does. The reason the digital response hit so fast and landed so hard comes down to something fundamental that the league's administrative leadership has consistently failed to grasp about the audience it currently has. The fans who drove the viewership explosion surrounding Clark's arrival in this league are not passive consumers who will quietly accept whatever product they're handed. They are deeply engaged, emotionally invested, and fully capable of organizing around a cause when they feel genuinely wronged by people who should be protecting the thing they love. Analysts who study sports media consumption patterns have made a point about this specific audience that deserves serious attention. A significant portion of the fans Clark brought into the WNBA's orbit came in specifically because of authenticity. They followed her from college at Iowa because what they saw felt honest, felt real, and felt worth caring about. Sophie Cunningham fits that exact same profile. She doesn't calculate how her personality will land at the corporate level. She competes and expresses herself without a filter. So when the league moved to suppress that kind of authentic expression, it didn't just alienate Cunningham's existing supporters. It directly threatened the trust of every single Clark fan who had chosen this league, because it felt different from the manufactured, carefully managed sports entertainment they were being sold everywhere else. Sports commentators who had spent months pushing back against the narrative of Clark as the league's singular cultural force went very quiet very fast. The digital numbers weren't offering them anything useful to argue with. Here is something that rarely makes sports headlines with the prominence it deserves, but sits at the absolute center of every decision made at the executive level of any professional sports league. Brand partners do not care about tradition. They do not care about internal politics. They do not care about which administrator has the longest tenure or which faction of a players' union holds the most internal influence at any given moment. They care about exactly one thing: return on investment. Every meeting, every renewal conversation, every contract review comes back to that single calculation. And right now, according to reports from people familiar with the conversations happening inside several of the WNBA's most significant corporate partnerships, some very uncomfortable internal reviews are actively underway. When a league's primary draw publicly signals willingness to walk away over a policy dispute, the calculation for every sponsor attached to that league changes immediately, and it changes in ways that are mathematical rather than emotional. If Caitlyn Clark reduces her involvement with the league, whether through a formal boycott, reduced engagement, or simply the kind of distracted and disrupted season that naturally follows a public war between a player and the organization that employs her, the viewership numbers that every single brand contract in this league was structured around disappear. Sponsors who built multi-season investment strategies around a growth story, with Clark's name written across every chapter, suddenly find themselves holding agreements that no longer reflect the product they purchased. Corporate attorneys at several major brand partners are reportedly reviewing what their existing agreements actually cover in terms of viewership guarantees and broadcast performance expectations. Multi-million-dollar deals built around projected audience metrics look fundamentally different when the primary driver of those metrics is an open, public conflict with league management. The language inside those contracts matters enormously right now in ways it hasn't mattered in years. What makes this situation even more damaging for league officials is the timing. This dispute is not unfolding in the offseason, where it can be quietly managed and resolved before the next broadcast cycle begins. This is happening in real time, during active games, with live advertising inventory already sold, already committed, and already communicated to brand partners who made their decisions based on specific audience projections. There is no clean administrative exit available here. There is no version of this where a carefully worded statement makes the problem disappear before the next game tips off. The message reportedly coming from corporate partners is not subtle, not patient, and not open to extended negotiation. Fix this situation immediately or face a fundamental restructuring of the financial relationship between this league and its sponsor community that nobody on the administrative side has the resources or the political capital to survive. Here is something that got completely buried under the avalanche of controversy surrounding the ban, and it deserves far more attention than the sports media conversation has given it. Because when you actually look at the basketball, when you pull up the statistics and examine what Sophie Cunningham is doing on the court with no narrative attached, what you find is genuinely striking in a way that makes the league's treatment of her even harder to defend. Pull up the three-point shooting numbers for the entire WNBA right now, and the picture is clear. Cunningham is sitting at 43% from beyond the arc, which places her among the very best long-range shooters in the entire league. For full context on what that number actually means, Aaliyah Boston leads the group of elite perimeter shooters at 46%. Kelsey Mitchell checks in at 42%. And Caitlyn Clark, despite operating under a minute's restriction and still somehow managing to claim Player of the Week honors during the same stretch, rounds out a four-player group that represents the absolute cream of three-point shooting in this league right now. Sophie Cunningham belongs in that conversation. The statistics put her there without any editorial assistance. Her on-court production keeps her there game after game regardless of how much or how little promotional attention she receives from the people who are supposed to be marketing this league to new audiences. And yet, the league's administrative decisions seem to operate in a completely parallel universe from the one where those numbers exist. Here is a player shooting 43% from deep, delivering elite-level production consistently. And instead of being celebrated as exactly the kind of multidimensional talent the league desperately needs to showcase, she became the subject of a licensing ban that suppressed the most viral moment of her entire season. The decision to ban the clip rather than capitalize on it commercially reveals something about the decision-making culture inside this league that statistics alone can't fully capture. There is something operating here that isn't merit. The numbers make that undeniable. The three-point contest conversation circulating in basketball communities online made this contradiction even harder to defend. Fans who actually did the research, who pulled up the shooting percentages and compared them honestly, came away genuinely stunned. A player sitting at 43% from deep, delivering that production in real games under real defensive pressure, and the league's response is to make her name difficult to monetize commercially. Cunningham deserved better from this league. The statistics demand it. The fan response confirms it loudly. And Caitlyn Clark, standing publicly in her corner at the exact moment when it cost her something to do so, is making absolutely certain the entire sports world hears that argument clearly and remembers it. While the political chaos was consuming executive floors and dominating every corner of sports media coverage, Caitlyn Clark was doing the one thing she does without fail every single time she steps between the lines. She was making history. And the specific circumstances under which she earned Player of the Week honors during this particular stretch made the achievement genuinely remarkable in a way that went beyond the standard recognition. She wasn't operating at full capacity. She was playing under a minute's restriction, which for anyone unfamiliar with the term means the coaching staff was deliberately and intentionally limiting her court time for load management purposes. She was not giving the floor everything she has. She was giving it a measured, controlled portion of what she's capable of. A fraction of Caitlyn Clark, a deliberately reduced version of the most impactful player in the league's current history. And she was still Player of the Week. Sit with that for a moment before moving past it. Minutes restricted, usage controlled, intentionally held back from playing her full game, and the Associated Press surveyed every player performing across the entire league and determined that she was still the most outstanding individual performer of the week. That isn't just impressive as an athletic achievement. That is a statement about the distance between Clark's ceiling and what the rest of the league is currently offering at its best. The gap is measurable. It shows up in the numbers. It shows up on the broadcast ratings. And it showed up again here during a week when she was playing with one hand tied behind her back administratively. The specific performance that defined this stretch added an entirely different layer to the story. With the game tied and the shot clock draining toward zero in a moment where the entire outcome hung in the balance, Clark tracked down a deflection near half court, applied pressure on the ball in a space where most players would have watched it go out of bounds, and converted a play that gave her team the lead at the exact moment they needed it most. 41 points in that game, on a minute's restriction. Against live competitive defense, in a situation where the stakes were real and the margin for error was zero. When asked about her mental process after the performance, her answer was direct and unfiltered in a way that explains precisely why fans connect to her so deeply and so personally. She talked about visualization, about deciding before the game starts that the night is going to be something special, about the discipline required to stay locked in and productive during stretches where nothing is falling, because the quality of the work you put in doesn't disappear just because the immediate results temporarily stop reflecting it. She talked about digging in when nobody around you cares about your excuses, finding a way to make your team better regardless of circumstances, and believing in yourself completely even when the ball won't cooperate. That mindset, paired with statistical production that genuinely leaves broadcast analysts searching for new language to describe it, is exactly what makes the league's treatment of her closest ally so completely baffling to anyone watching from the outside with clear eyes. The greatest player this league has ever seen is breaking records under restrictions, while simultaneously fighting publicly for the rights of someone the administrative structure tried to silence. And the entire sports world is watching every second of it unfold. Here is what every league executive needs to understand clearly, because a press release isn't going to fix this, and a quiet policy reversal announced on a Friday afternoon isn't going to undo what happened. This isn't a story that ends when the ban gets reversed or when a carefully drafted statement gets pushed out through official channels. What Caitlyn Clark triggered with this ultimatum is something permanent. A realignment of power inside professional women's sports that cannot be walked back, cannot be managed into irrelevance, and cannot be absorbed quietly by an administrative structure that has spent years believing it held all the cards. The old model is finished. The version of professional sports where executives controlled the narrative, athletes absorbed unjust decisions in silence, and corporate choices went publicly unchallenged because the people affected by them were afraid of the consequences. That model ended the moment Clark decided her platform was worth more than her comfort. It ended publicly, in front of millions of witnesses, during a season when the financial stakes attached to her name were higher than they had ever been. There was no ambiguity, no room for reinterpretation, no way to spin the moment into something more manageable for the people who needed it to be manageable. Sophie Cunningham is one piece of a much larger story that is still actively unfolding. A story about who actually holds power in modern sports media. Whether that power belongs to the administrators making decisions behind closed doors, or to the athletes whose names fill stadiums, drive broadcast numbers, and make the entire commercial enterprise worth anything at all. Clark answered that question definitively for anyone who was still uncertain. True generational talent cannot be managed by committee. It cannot be contained by administrative pride. It cannot be silenced when it decides that something matters enough to speak about it publicly regardless of the personal cost. What happens next is something every fan, every sponsor, every network executive, and every player across every professional women's sports league in this country will be watching very closely. The league will make its decision about the ban, one way or another. Brand partners will apply financial pressure through whatever channels are available to them. Fans will watch the games, or they won't, based on what they see from the people responsible for protecting the sport. But the shift that occurred this week inside the power structure of women's professional basketball cannot be reversed by any of those decisions. The dynamic changed. The athletes know it. The executives know it. And the fans who made this moment possible by showing up in numbers that nobody in a boardroom fully anticipated are the reason the shift happened at all. The WNBA had something genuinely rare and genuinely valuable land in its lap. An athlete capable of changing the commercial trajectory of an entire league. The question the people running this organization need to answer honestly, to themselves before anyone else, is whether they are capable of getting out of their own way long enough to let that happen. Based on everything that has unfolded over the past several weeks, the answer to that question is not yet clear. Here at Clark Spotlight, we will be right here covering every single move as it develops. Hit subscribe if you want to be the first to know when the next chapter of this story lands, because it is coming, and it will not be quiet. Here is what the last several weeks have actually proven, stripped of all the noise, all the political framing, and all the corporate spin. Caitlyn Clark is not just a basketball player. She is a structural force. A single individual whose presence or absence changes the financial mathematics of an entire professional sports league. That does not happen often. In the full history of professional sports, you can count on one hand the athletes who reached that level of institutional impact while still actively playing. Sophie Cunningham'S ban was never just about a clip or a licensing decision. It was a test of whether the people running this league understand what they actually have and what it will cost them to keep treating it carelessly. The test results are in. The fans delivered them. The sponsors are delivering them. And Caitlyn Clark delivered hers in the most direct language available. The league can reverse the ban. It can draft statements and hold meetings and announce policy reforms. But the moment that revealed who holds the real power in women's basketball cannot be taken back. That moment belongs to history now. The only question left is whether the people still making decisions inside that league are smart enough to learn from it before it's too late.